Okay, shalom everyone. Great to be back. Today is the 18th of March, 2025. Um, I always say to myself, I feel terrible doing the Tuesday Zooms and the Thursday Zooms with Janice because the breaking news is always on the Sabbath, on the weekend. But actually, the breaking news was last night and this morning, and so we have some fresh material. Well, every week it's new, fresh material. But Israel has resumed military operations in Gaza. I think the Israeli leadership, together with President Trump and the American leadership, basically said that we had had enough of the stalling or the abject refusal of Hamas to hand over our people, our hostages. And so last night started the targeted bombing. And in case you guys didn't know it, I'm sure you do know it, but for anyone else who's watching the Zoom, and we have between 1,500 to 2,000 every week watching this taped message. Israel does not just go in and bomb the heck out of everybody. Israel has its intelligence sources. We know where every Hamas member lives and sleeps, how to reach them, how to kill them. But we don't. We make every effort not to hurt innocent civilians, even though we always say there are no innocents in Gaza. They're all terrorists. But we go after the higher level Hamas terrorists, the kind of people we saw during the prisoner exchange, during the hostage exchange, even with the hoods they were wearing, the masks they were wearing, and we heard the voices, we knew who they were. Um, we had some very horrible mistakes on October 7th with our intelligence or lack of intelligence. But now in Gaza, I think they've made up for it, and they are doing a very, very good job in Gaza, tracking down the worst offenders of Hamas and eliminating them. So from the last information I had from an hour ago, the death toll among the Hamas terrorists was 500, with 1,000 wounded. So they're getting the heck bombed out of them. Um, the Israeli government is saying, we're not going to stop until Hamas is completely eradicated. Uh, we're talking about, they said probably a month, and that the fighting would accelerate and accelerate and accelerate until it's finished, or unless Hamas releases all of the hostages alive and dead. So we are waiting to see where this is all going. Personally, my wife and I are very relieved that the army went back into action. We were taken for suckers by the Hamas, and so now we're doing what I don't want to say what we should have done before, because we did get back live hostages, but it gets to the point where they've had over 2 weeks of ceasefire without releasing even one hostage. And as you all probably know, those of you who are Americans, you know that President Trump has no patience for the nonsense of the Hamas. We are neighbors of the Hamas. We have been living with them or trying to live with them. We kind of understand them. President Trump has no reason to understand them. President Trump has an agenda, and praise God, because under Biden, there was a lack of an agenda, and Biden and the Democrats were seen as awfully weak. And finally, we have a president in the White House who knows what he's doing. All of his advisors are top notch and pro-Israel, pro-God, pro-Bible, pro-Christianity, pro-Jewish. So I think this is a miracle from God that Trump got elected, a miracle for Israel, for the Jewish people, even though there's some people who call themselves Jewish, but they don't appreciate the president, and that's wrong. They should. Anyway, so we're all very, very excited. And, one of my complaints about this war is that for the last year and a half, I'm just addicted to the news. I'm glued to the TV, watching all the different stations, monitoring everything that they're saying, then coming to you guys with whatever seems to me correct to say. Horrible, horrible situation with Gaza. Maybe we are now approaching a situation where there is light at the end of the tunnel. And again, without overdoing it, I have to tell you, I think it's a great thing that Hamas has been ground down as best as it has been ground down. It's a wonderful thing that Hezbollah in Lebanon has been ground down. It's not finished yet, but the really, really strategic threat to Israel is gone from Hezbollah. We have another problem now, that the Sunnis of Syria, of the Turks, they are now invading Lebanon, and they're fighting the Shiites. And this is something, Megan, that you were referring to, that the Sunnis are killing what they say innocent Alawites. The Alawites have been torturing and killing 500,000 Syrians who were killed over the years of the civil war, 500,000, and 5 million Syrian Sunnis were expelled, were forced to flee for their lives. So now it's the turn of the Sunnis to annihilate the Shiites. But unfortunately, that includes annihilating the Christians and annihilating the Druze and annihilating the Kurds. So there's so much going on that we really don't have a grasp on. We don't really understand where this is all going. And so Israel has to be very, very ready for anything that develops. But like I said before, Gaza has been ground down. Hezbollah has been ground down. We got Syria. Who would have believed it? We got Syria without a war, basically. Now the Sunnis of Giuliani, they're on the verge of, they're already on the border with Lebanon fighting Hezbollah. In other words, as Prime Minister Begin once said, we wish both sides all the success, because both of them hate Israel. So let God take care of that. And as you all know, President Trump had been saying all along to the Israelis, don't attack Iran. We have to try diplomatically, the same kind of thing that Biden used to say, and through different means. But the point is that now President Trump is saying that if the Israelis attack, we will join them in the attack on Iran. Iran is very, very forceful in its rejection of any overtures of peace by Trump. I think that the Ayatollah Khamenei is suicidal. It's kind of like Hitler before he died. He was suicidal. He was going to take all of the German people to hell with him. And so now Khamenei wants to destroy Iran, but of course never considered that maybe he was wrong all along. So Israel and the United States, praise God, I'm happy to say, the Americans and the Israelis are marching in lockstep. We are constantly taking into consideration what the other side is doing. And also, by the way, Biden was pussyfooting with the Houthis in Yemen, and the allies, the United States, England, maybe France also, have been punishing the Houthis in Yemen. So it'll be very interesting to see how Yemen gets ground down to dust also, together with all these other proxies of Iran. And I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think when this is all said and done, Iran will be defeated, will be ground down. And, President Trump is saying that he wants a Nobel Peace Prize. No, he said, I don't want a Nobel Peace Prize. I want my bust on Mount Rushmore. And I would support that. I think that President Trump finally, after the great nation, the United States of America, has so many stupid presidents, and finally gets a really good president, a God-fearing, smart businessman who knows how to do things right, weeds out the corruption. I've said this many times in these weekly Zooms. I'm happy to be alive at this time, to be a witness to the bad things, but now to the good things. And so we're very excited where President Trump is right now. He's marching with us. By the way, just a little point of which I know there are a lot of people, even in my own family, who disagree with me. My family was from Argentina, and Javier Milei, is president of Argentina. He's doing a MAGA on Argentina, make Argentina great again. He's coordinating everything with the U.S. government and with Israel. And yet there's some Jews who are really stupid, and they think that that this guy is dangerous. Why? Because he's so Judaic that when he's overthrown at some stage, the Jews will be blamed, and there will be a massive exodus or killing of Jews in Argentina. So I'm an optimist. I have a good feeling about Milei. He's a little crazy sometimes. Everybody's a little crazy. My wife has been telling me for 75 years that I'm crazy. But still, I'm in business, So many times somebody's a little crazy, but he's the greatest president the U.S. ever had, or the best president Argentina has ever had, or Netanyahu. That there are some people say never Bibi, and yet he's the best prime minister we ever had. So there are always some crazy, jealous, vindictive, stupid Jews who don't really understand anything, and it's sad. It's sad because Holocaust really come out of that. Israel is stronger than ever. Our enemies are weaker than ever. The United States is bringing President Trump is bringing America to the highest levels ever. We're going to see this proven again and again in the coming 3.5 years. So I'm very excited. I think I haven't gone to Argentina in 60 years, and I want to go very much. It's almost like my mother country because my parents grew up in Argentina. My grandparents are buried in Argentina. Argentina should have been a world power, but because of the stupidity and corruption of the Peronists and the socialists and the military dictators, and everyone was corrupt. So I'm very excited to see Argentina trying to get closer to the U.S., trying to get closer to Israel. This is a great time for us, for all of us. And I just pray that Trump has a long life, good life. Netanyahu has a long life, good life, and Milei will not be tampered with by small-minded enemies in Argentina. And anyway, I'm very excited. I'm very happy to be a witness to all of this. I know it's a little short this time. I have a lot more to say, but are there questions that anyone wants to ask?
Avi, with the uptick in fighting and on excuse me, so many fronts, are the troops being stretched so thin? Is this sustainable?
Your question is a fantastic question. There has been talk in Israel that we were, I wouldn't say overextended, but our army of 300,000 was too small, and that our reservists could not take it anymore. The reservists were pulled up and pulled up and pulled up, and many people were losing their homes because they couldn't pay their mortgages. They couldn't feed their families. There was divorce, very high divorce among the military that served because the women couldn't take 300 days out of the year of their husband away from home, and that the women had to raise the children. The Israeli army was chopped down very much by stupid prime ministers like Ehud Barak, stupid generals, stupid people in the Secret Service. All of this is coming now to the front, and Netanyahu is taking the right steps to increase the size of the Israeli army. Don't forget, every few months, every few weeks, we have new cadres of soldiers out of high school joining the Israeli army. So the Israeli army is not going to be small and smart anymore. It's going to be big and smart. and frankly, I mean, if you ask me, I'm a Sovietologist. According to Soviet behavior, a lot of people should be shot. Now, of course, a lot of these socialists who are still in key positions in the judiciary and in the military and in the foreign service and the civil service, a lot of these people say that people like me should be shot, the right wingers. And there is talk of a civil war, and God forbid, in Israel. And it would be basically the suppression by 30% of the population of 70% of the population. But the army is growing. We have a whole new generation of young officers coming in who know how to do the job right and not pussyfooting, because all these top generals who are now being relieved of command were pussyfooters. They did not do their job. They did not go for victory. So to answer your question, yes, the army is too small. The military has been overstretched the last year and a half. And now the Israeli military is taking steps to increase the numbers of soldiers in the military, and more efforts are being made to mobilize, for example, the ultra-Orthodox. Or there are many of conscientious objectors in Tel Aviv, the ones who march against the government, and they don't serve in the army to get psychological exemption. So I think what we're going to be seeing is that the army is going to have much stricter guidelines for exemption from military service, both for the ultra-Orthodox as well as for the lefties in Tel Aviv. And also there are people like the Arabs, including Arab Muslims, Arab Christians, for whom service in the Israeli army is not I don't want to say necessary. A lot of people are just exempted. They were exempted until now because the Israeli army felt it had the luxury not to mobilize everyone. They would mobilize only those who had the best intentions to be mobilized. We have to get more people into the military. Some people were saying we have to go from 300,000 to an army of 600,000. So, but like I said before, we were facing 7 active fronts. Gaza, which we're fighting now, we're grinding it down to the finish. Hezbollah, the Sunnis of Syria are going to grind them down to the finish. Then we're going to have to face the Sunnis because they're backed by the Turks, and the Turks are looking for trouble, even though I think the United States government is trying to make nice with the Turks so that the Turks will make nice with Israel. That might happen, I don't know. But you have the proxies of Iran in Iraq, you have the Houthis, you have Iran, you have Judea and Samaria. And as you all know, my son Aaron is very active on that front. And so we still have our challenges facing us, but I think we have overcome the worst of the hurdles over the last year and a half. So did I answer your question, Laurie?
Yes.
Thank you. Next.
When you were talking about Turkey and Syria, I saw something that said that the Turks were building a military base in Syria, in the area where the Russians left.
Well, obviously, there's no such thing as a vacuum. The Russians left because the Sunnis see the Russians as well as enemies. And so the Turks take over. There's no vacuum. The Turks moved in when the Russians moved out. I'm thinking we have to be very, very cautious because the bottom line of the Sunnis in Syria is, of course, to destroy the Shiites and then to go to Jerusalem, take over Jerusalem. So, you know, this is a time bomb getting ready to explode, but probably not just yet. I think also, now I'm going to say something very wild. I think that President Trump is trying to cut a deal. Okay, now have patience with what I'm saying. To try to cut a deal with Russia. Russia is, I think, at its weakest point in decades. And I think Trump is saying to Russia, listen, you Russians can be overrun by China. China is your enemy. China, for its own reasons, has been working together with the Russians, but the Chinese want their land back in eastern Siberia. And we may see a brewing conflict between Russia and China. And so I think Trump is saying to the Russians, don't rule out an alliance with the United States, Europe, and even with Israel. And I think that there are different talks about, if Russia stays out of what's about to happen with Iran. Russia has always threatened a nuclear war over Iran. I think the Russians now are very carefully pulling back and hoping that Trump will trade off Ukraine for Iran. So I don't know where this is all going. I think personally Iran will be brought to democracy. I think that the leadership of Iran is going to be overthrown, and we're going to have a new leadership. More than half of the Iranian people were born after the revolution of 1979. Most Iranians cannot take it anymore with this fanatic Shiite leadership. So I think that Iran is going to see a regime change. Nothing the Russians can do about it. Nothing the Chinese can do about it. So the axis of evil will lose Iran, and Iran will join the West. So you're going to have basically Russia, China, North Korea. But if Russia is peeled off from that alliance by President Trump, that's a win-win for the West. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hi, Avi.
Angela.
Hello there. I've just been reading on that the Houthis have made an announcement that they are now at war with America and will respond to any attack. We will not cease our activities in the Red Sea under American pressure, they say. I mean, that's kind of a crazy statement to make. But doesn't that put Iran directly in the crosshairs of America now?
Absolutely. President Trump said the next missile or the next terror act coming out of Yemen will be credited to the Iranian regime.
Right,
Meaning,
I missed that.
And the United States together are going to do a hack job on Iran.
Yeah.
We're waiting any moment for that. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, they're defiant. We'll see. We'll see.
There's a saying in Judaism that there's a reason that God made Pharaoh's heart stubborn.
Indeed.
Wow.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Avi.
Thank you, my dear. I'm happy to see all my favorite people.
Oh, miss you.
I also saw, I don't know if it's true, what I saw said that a Houthi missile aimed at Israel, but it hit Egypt. I don't know if that's true.
Well, until now, the Egyptians have not fired missiles, but I think what you're referring to is that Yemen fired missiles at Israel, but they were actually landed in Egypt.
Right, that's right. Yes, that's what I heard.
The crazy thing is that Egypt is threatening Israel if we don't hand over the Philadelphia corridor. But on the other hand, Israel has been attacking the Houthis, which was in favor of the Egyptian transit of the Suez Canal for maritime shipping. So, we're doing the Egyptians a favor. And it's still something wrong with the Egyptians that they are looking for war. They lost Sinai so many times, and we had to give it back because of pressure from American presidents so many times. I would say the Egyptians, cool it, relax. We have no problem with Egypt. Maybe they have a problem, but that's their own psychological problem. But we have had a very good peace agreement. all these years, since 1979 with Egypt. And it could have been a lot better. You don't see Egyptian tourists coming to Israel. And the Israeli tourists going to Egypt are less and less and less because of the Islamic terrorism there. Islam is still the demonic, satanic system it always has been. It's very hard to make peace with Islamic countries.
Mhm.
Is Egypt majority Sunni?
Yes, absolutely. The Christians who are Coptic are about 10, 20, 30%. Nobody really knows because the Muslim government doesn't want anyone to know how many Coptic Christians there are. But the Coptic Christians are the original Egyptians. They're the pharaonic original Christians.
No Shia population there?
No Shia in Egypt. If there are Egyptians who decide to become Shiite, they leave Egypt and then they go to Iraq or Syria and convert over to the Shiite system there. But as you see, the Turks have succeeded in overthrowing Shia Islam in Syria, and they're working to overthrow the Shiites in Lebanon. So it's going to be interesting to see when will the Shiites wake up and actually come to Israel for support instead of attacking Israel. At this point, at least until now, it's what former Prime Minister Menachem Begin said many years ago: we wish the Shiites and the Sunnis all the success in fighting each other.
Have you heard any reaction yet from hostage families to the increase, the resumption of fighting in Gaza?
Well, I think the hostage families understand that when President Trump says that the Gaza terrorists are crazy, and Witkoff, I saw Witkoff on the news yesterday, and he gave up. He said the Gaza terrorists are completely crazy, totally irrational. So the problem is we have a hate Bibi system in Israel, and people keep blaming Bibi. There's nothing Bibi can do, Netanyahu. He's done his best, and the families until now were constantly blaming Netanyahu for everything, when it's the fault of Gaza Hamas. Crazy. I've heard people say, you know what? God forbid, let the 59 hostages burn, because they're all socialists. They all came from Kibbutzim and from people who attended the Nova party, which took place on the Sabbath. They shouldn't have been there. And when they get freed, what do? They attack Bibi. Instead of saying thank you to our prime minister, they attack him. So there are a lot of people who are saying, why should we even waste our time? Finish the war, defeat the Hamas, declare victory, and then work with Trump to turn Gaza into Singapore, Singapore or French Riviera. There is so much potential in Gaza, and it's been completely destroyed by terrorists. Your question, are most of the remaining hostages not soldiers? The remaining hostages, the vast majority, are either soldiers or people who could be mobilized to serve as soldiers. In other words, those who were not soldiers were released until now.
Avi, I saw Bibi had sacked the head of Shin Bet and read various commentary around that, and that I understand now Ben Gvir has rejoined the government.
There has been very positive discussion. What has been in the last hour, when I last checked the news, It was just positive talk. It was not yet finalized.
Right. Okay.
But, I did want to make a general comment. The Knesset has 120 deputies. Netanyahu formed his government with, I think, 62 or 63 or 64. We are now up to 68 deputies. If Ben-Gvir joins, we will be up to 78 deputies. And the Arabs are 10, and the rest are socialists. So that's about 20. So the thing is, all of these anti-Netanyahu protesters in Tel Aviv and all that, they represent about 10 to 15% of the Jewish people. 10 to 15%. And the rest of the Jewish people are right-wing, religious, and pro-Bibi.
Yes, its ratings are very high. But I was also reading that Lieberman has said that he wants to become the next prime minister. Where does he sit in all this?
Oh, Lieberman is another former Likud member
Yeah.
who ran afoul of Netanyahu.
Mm.
Ali Bennett was another who was prime minister for 1 year,
Hmm.
also ran afoul of Netanyahu. Listen, Netanyahu is a very, very forceful leader, and there are people who have egos, which are so. I'm not saying
Yes.
that Netanyahu doesn't have an ego. He could not be doing what he's doing without having the ego that he has. But the Likud and Gidon Sar and what's his name? The one who just rejoined, having a senior moment.
He's here.
Itamar Ben-Gvir and
Mm.
Avigdor Lieberman, they're all Likud people, but they broke away from the party to form their own parties because of their own, I don't want to say ego, because of their own understanding of how things should be done within the Likud. And, but the point I'm saying is we're talking about, in my opinion, close to 80 out of 120 members of Knesset are right-wing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the ultra-Orthodox are right-wing. So we're left with 10 members of Knesset who are Arabs, Muslims, and 30 who are socialists.
Right. And the head of Shin Bet, has he been replaced yet by anyone?
Well, he was supposed to be replaced today. They were supposed to
Right.
have a meeting at the Knesset, and I think Netanyahu was threatened by the Attorney General, the beautiful blonde lady who was constantly attacking the party. And I think what he did was he postponed the firing of Ronen Bar with the attack on Gaza. And I'll say something which maybe I shouldn't say, but I always say things I shouldn't say. There's another general by name of Bar. He's the head of the Air Force, and he was also guilty for many mistakes made on October the 7th. And he's supposed to be fired also. But Netanyahu will not fire him, because if he fires this general, the Israeli Air Force will be grounded. A lot of pilots are totally socialist. They could never become pilots if they weren't socialist. They went through the sieve, to the filter. So I think that Netanyahu wants to wait. I would say we have to wait until after the war with Iran is completed before we do anything to the commander of the Air Force.
Yeah.
Because those people who were threatening to resist and not go go fight in the army, these are all people who are following socialist ideology. In other words, our biggest threat today in Israel is not from the Arabs. Our biggest threat is from the socialists. And they say the biggest threat is Netanyahu, biggest threat to Israel.
It's shocking that in a time of war on 7 fronts, the way and what happened on the 7th of October, that they're
Right.
willing to tear the country apart from within and spread all this division. It is shocking.
I want to tell you something. Again, it's a terrible thing. I really shouldn't say it. But in World War I, the Russians had a very big army, the Tsarist Russians, and they were undermined by Lenin and by the communists, the socialists. And what happened was that the Bolsheviks, who were really the smaller group, and the Mensheviks, who were really the bigger group. Mensheviks means smaller. Bolsheviks means the bigger. But it was a lie. It was the reverse. The Bolsheviks were the smaller, and the Mensheviks were the bigger. But the Bolsheviks wiped out the Mensheviks. Then they wiped out the social revolutionaries. Then they wiped out all of the people who were loyal to the Tsar. Then they wiped out all the rich people because it was a class war. They destroyed Russia, and that's what the Soviet Union came out of. And we are very, very afraid of civil war here, where this small group of stalwarts, of holdovers from Soviet era, from 100 years ago, these people are still running the country. And I'm telling you, Netanyahu, we have to pray for Netanyahu. We have to pray for God to give him a strong health and a strong backbone, and not listen to all this garbage that the attorney generals and the Supreme Court justices and the top socialist people in the military and intelligence, these people are all working to overthrow the democratically elected government of Netanyahu. This is the real enemy to Israel, and they say we're the enemy. And again, I recommend to everyone who's on this Zoom to look up the Russian movie Admiral. The Admiral movie is a composite of different stories that all come together, showing just how the communists took over in Russia. And all the heroes of World War I against the Germans were not all, many of them were annihilated by the Bolsheviks. And after that, you had Stalin and you had the gulags and all these prisons, just as bad as the Nazis almost. I have to thank God that I'm 76, I'm still alive, and I specialize in Soviet communism. I know how these people work. And I definitely do not want to see bayonets and firing squads in Israel. But maybe that's something that the left wants. Can you believe it? We defeated Gaza, we defeated Lebanon, we defeated Syria, we defeated Iraq, we defeated Iran, we defeated Houthis. We are now defeating Judea and Samaria terrorists. And then you have these left-wing people coming to defeat us and say that we're the fault.
I can't really understand what they think they're doing and to what end exactly. You know, that was the most barbaric massacre that took place on Israeli soil, an invasion on their own territory. And they swore to do it again and again.
By the way, Biden knew, the deep state knew, our top generals knew. There was an agreement to give the top generals 7 hours to give Hamas 7 hours to do all the killing they wanted, and then to blame Netanyahu so that Netanyahu would be forced to resign from prime minister. There's treason here. There should be fire. There should be violence.
Wow.
I'm a Sovietologist. I know how these people think.
Wow.
They're just deranged, absolutely deranged.
Yeah.
And that's what we see going on, in our country. There's no, you can't wrap your mind around it because it's not rational in any direction that you look at with what the left and these people want, these socialists want. I mean, we know what they want, but there's no wrapping your mind around the normalcy or common sense or anything. And it is quite a spiritual battle. It is huge. You can't even get your mind wrapped around it wherever you are.
Elizabeth, Americans, Brits, the Anglos are people who come out of a history of 1215 of the Magna Carta, and where finally the king was brought under control by the nobility. It wasn't even democracy yet, but Western democracy, Judeo-Christian Western civilization democracy, is something that developed in the Anglo countries and then later in Western Europe, but it never developed in Israel. because the leadership in Israel from day one, from the last 100 years, are communist. And a lot of our people are from former Muslim countries, including my wife, for example. So the Magna Carta and Judeo-Christian civilization are foreign to them. And when I say we have to have a Judeo-Christian party here in Israel, the problem is many Americans, many Brits, many Canadians come to live in Israel. They flee. They get thrown out because they are not part of the cabal. They're not part of this Soviet socialist or Islamic system. So I'm very lonely. It's very hard to do what I'm doing. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. And it could be I'm crazy. You can't fight City Hall. You've heard that before. But on the other hand, if we get an aliyah, if we get an immigration of 5 to 10 million Jews and Christians from the West coming to Israel, then my party becomes the biggest party in the Knesset. And then all of a sudden, they'll say Avi was right all along, which is not the first time I've heard that. How do you like that, Elizabeth?
I liked it. We're crazy with you, okay? We're crazy with you.
Thank you.
By
the way, my
you
plans,
wake up, it's like you say, you watch the news every day, all day. I watch the news more than anything, and it's like you can't even keep up with what's going on. It's moving so fast.
Yeah, and at the moment you think you kept up, something new happens.
Exactly. And it's just it's the end of the times. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Things are getting faster and faster and faster. By the way, my updated schedule for the States is I have my what do you call it? Oh, I need a cup of strong Turkish coffee. My pacemaker will have its battery changed on April the 9th. And then, God willing, everything goes well. I cannot travel for 30 days to recuperate. And so probably May the 9th, I'll fly to Florida. And then probably I'll get to Texas by June the 9th. So it's a ballpark figure of when I'll get back to the States.
Well, we'll certainly pray that all goes well with your pacemaker and everything.
Amen. Amen. My wife wants me to do the dishes all the time, so I have to be very careful with my heart.
Tell her it affects your heart.
It's occupational therapy to do the dishes.
Yeah.
Any more questions? I think we're getting close to the bottom of the hour.
Sounds like that's it for today.
Okay, sweetie. I appreciate all you're doing. And nobody talks about my son Aaron, but he's the one, I think he's the one who posted on YouTube.
Yep.
Thank you, Avi. Shalom. It was good to see you.
Until next